So tonight I wanted to talk about the three jewels, which is also considered the three refuges. And I get so excited right now because it's Pride Month and like there are extra rainbow flags in my community when I walk around and I know I'm not supposed to be happy that Target has, little rainbow flip-flops and other things, but I actually am. And, I am because like when I grew up, I didn't even know that being gay existed until I was in college. There wasn't a thing where I knew about it. I just thought I was weird. I didn't even know that weird meant gay. I just thought it meant weird. And so I really like having all the rainbow things around. I don't really like the corporations and the racialized capitalism, but I do like, just this sense of that, there's visibility around us. And it is kind of annoying that everything gets kind of smushed into a month, but other people know that experience when they're marginalized, like Black History Month or Women's History Month or Asian American, like we get our little months. And so, in looking at the jewels, it's a way that we can think about how do we create our community? How do we create our grounding? How do we create this beauty for ourselves throughout the year? Not just when we get this little bit of sparkle during June or whatever the month is. Like here in Oakland, because we have to do things different in Oakland, we have like our prides in, I think, September. So, but that's because, the big city in the West Bay has theirs in June. So I wanted to talk about the refuges because I feel like it has been such a support for me. And I think it's useful because for me, I grew up in a very sense of being really super independent, fiercely independent, which was one of the ways that I felt like I could learn how to survive, was to really be self-referential and to, believe in what I thought was right, not what anybody else thinks was right. And so in the refuges, there is these different elements that we can begin to try on to kind of see what they mean. And so there are three refuges, and the first one is the refuge in the Buddha. The second is the refuge in the Dharma. And the third is the refuge in the Sangha or community. And the thing that I think about these refuges is that they're a way of offering protection that isn't like a shield or guard in the way that I know like to get protection. Because most of the time when I feel like I need to protect, I'd be like, contract, haha, It's like I'm like ready, and it's all this about like I can just feel my whole body kind of recoil. But the refuges are sort of building up this base, this root, if you will, to support. And so if we think of the first refuge, um, we can think of this refuge of the Buddha. And, for some people, it's really the sense of the faith that there was this person 2,600 years ago who was able to awaken as a human. And for me, that's kind of nice. I mean, sometimes I look at the images of the Buddha and that really supports me. And for me, the more powerful thing is that there is a capacity within me that can awaken, that some people identify as the Buddha nature or just the beauty within or that inner knowing or the inner wisdom or that intuition or the sense of like accountability or grounding, whatever the language is for you. And to me, this is really important because if I don't have that inner knowing, I can be just swayed by this tendencies to like be, run by what I like or what I don't like or what somebody else likes or what someone else says is good or even trying to figure out. So when we think about this what we might call the Buddha, this capacity within us um, that we can rely on, that's reliable. And I think, for me, I think a lot of it like a seed. Like sometimes I don't know. And that's part of the practice is like sort of figuring out, like, how do I, is this really the inner wisdom, or is this just like some talk in my mind? I have to kind of work through and figure that out. Because to me, one of the things that I can do as I begin to have this inner refuge is I can let down some of those walls that I built to guard myself, the walls for protection that are come from a place of fear or separation, or this way that I need to kind of keep myself away from the world, that I, in order to protect and to be safe, if you will, I have to kind of keep the world over there, and then I'm over here, and then I'm going to be okay. And if I can come into this sense of this inner knowing, there is a capacity, and it's not that it's available at all times because I'm still growing it, but that I can be in the midst of the world and not be like rocked around by it. And so that to me is that capacity of the Buddha, what's sometimes people call the Buddha nature. There's a simile of the refuges that you may have heard oftentimes, how the lotus is used, and in the Buddhist teachings. And so in this simile of the refuges, the Buddha is the lotus flower, who is just this beauty and perfection. And so the lotus flower, if we think of ourselves as the lotus flower, this inner Buddha, that the lotus flower, and I know many of you have heard this, but it grows in the muck. It's this beautiful flower, and it grows in the mud, and it abides, just in this beauty connected to the world. And so Bhikkhu Bodhi says, the Buddha's teachings of the true Dhamma is like the sweet fragrance emitted by the lotus. So the Buddha is the lotus, and the Buddha's teachings is the fragrance of the lotus. And then the Sangha is like the host of bees who collect around the lotus, gather up the pollen, and fly off to their hives and transform it into honey. And so in this simile, the three jewels, the Buddha is the lotus, that's that inner beauty that we have. And then the teaching is the fragrance, that's just there. How like a flower, when you walk by the flower, it's not a transaction. The flower is not having its sweet scent in order for anything to happen for us humans. It's just available. And then the Sangha, the community, are those bees that kind of come in and they begin to transform the pollen in their lives. And then, of course, many of you know Thich Nhat Hanh's saying, no mud, no lotus. To me, that is just like such a synthesis of what the world is. It's like, no mud, no lotus. Like you got to have the compost pile right there next to your garden to keep the flowers to grow. You got to have all that good nutrients, and it's just no mud, no lotus. And I really appreciate that. Just this way that we are in the world. We don't have to leave the world to find that beauty. We can be in the world. And Thich Nhat Hanh says, if you expand that quote, he says, Thich Nhat Hanh, for those of you who don't know, is a Vietnamese monk who actually he's in Vietnam right now, and he has the order of interbeing. And he says, most people are afraid of suffering, but suffering is a kind of mud to help the lotus flower of happiness grow. There can be no lotus flower without the mud. So this is the way that we can remember. And I know sometimes when we're in the middle of it, it's hard to remember that the mud is like part of the world. You're kind of just like, oh, I'm shoveling. There I am shoveling that mud again. And it's sometimes hard to remember that that is the world, and that in any moment there is a possibility of beauty. That beauty doesn't have to be pleasant, it doesn't have to be fun, that there is a possibility of somehow in the midst of it all being like that, beautiful, graceful lotus flower blossoming. And the Dhamma, I think, is the one that took me the longest to figure out. The Dhamma, or the Dharma, depending on whether you're talking about in Pali or in Sanskrit, is the fragrance. And the easiest way that I think to explain what this is oftentimes we orient ourselves around the way that we want the world to be. But the world, there's actually natural laws of the world, like gravity and, like the way the world is made up of certain atoms and elements and things. And it's not the way that we want the world to be. And so oftentimes we try to set the world up according to the way, to our likes and dislikes. And the Dharma is the way things are, the way that things have come to be. And so, like, having a background in ecosystem studies, for me, it really is like this system of causes and effects, that we're all in this web together, we're impacting each other, and we see the impacts of the histories that we've all been in together. And so, this year with the pandemic, the pandemic has been caused by so many myriad conditions of global climate change, population growth, the human wildland interface, like inequities of healthcare, all of these things have come to be. That's part of the way things are. And so that doesn't mean that we just have to accept it. That's not the part that I'm saying. It's just that this is the way things are right now is not the way they have to be, but it's just like, like I'm just like, I really wish it wasn't like that. But it is like that right now. Like you may wish, like, for example, there to be the end to the legacies of racial injustice, which is one of the things that I work on with like all of my heart, to disrupt white supremacy. And I know white supremacy is still here. And that's part of the reason why I work so hard to disrupt and heal that trauma that our country carries. Because part of this image of the Dhamma, of the smell, the fragrance of the lotus, this image, the simile for the Dharma, is that it permeates the world, that there's actually a way that this world works, that's this interconnected, that this system of who we are with all living beings. Thich Nhat Hanh says it this way. He says, without suffering, there's no happiness, so we shouldn't discriminate against the mud. We have to learn how to embrace and cradle our own suffering and the suffering of the world with a lot of tenderness. And so, in this idea that we shouldn't like just be like pushing away, just like, get out of here, bud, because that's about the separation. And there's actually an impact on ourselves when we separate and when we other. And can we somehow, within the midst of it all, connect to that beauty in us? And then the third jewel of the Sangha, of the community, is something that, it's kind of ironic for me that I spend so much time in this relational community stuff, because as a kid, like, I really did not like people. And I can't say that I really like a lot of people now either. There's a lot of people that I still have a hard time with, and I'm a total introvert. And so I also just know that community is so beautiful. And I can think of it now, like because I've spent enough time in nature, I could be like, oh, yeah, you're like that rock. Oh, yeah, you're like that tree. Oh, yeah. And so then I can begin to like think about my friends or people that I know, like, oh, you're really a thorny rose, aren't you? You got the beauty, you got the thorns, or, oh, yeah, you're like the willow and you're really, so I use my understanding of the natural world to help me in community, to help me know, like, how like you go into a forest and there's this tree that had to grow really close to another tree. And so then on one side of them, they don't have any branches. Sometimes we meet people like that have really had to grow in the shadow of something. And so our community has been impacted by the causes and conditions of their lives, our Sangha. And the Sangha in particular in the Buddhist teachings is also the Sangha of people who have come together to practice the Buddhist teachings. And to me, that has been so significant to be with people who believe there's a way to get unhooked from greed, unhooked from hatred, and uncover delusion. Like it brings me so much inspiration in the world that there are others out there who want to get unhooked from greed, that don't want to just operate their lives trying to get more, or unhooked from hatred. Like that there are people that I can be with who don't want to just be like, I'm better than, which to me is part of hatred. And you're, like, and so that there are these communities like this one here that we can operate in this way, that we can see the beauty in each other. So if we were to think about what are the communities that come together, it would be around generosity, around kindness, around wisdom and care. And for me, particularly, the Sangha has been the queer community. And I've been really lucky because as a practitioner, and one of the reasons why it was so important for me to have the Alphabet Sangha, or the queer Sangha, was because I was lucky enough to have my first meditation teacher be a gay man. And then my second meditation teacher to be a lesbian. And then my third meditation teacher to be a gay man. Something looks familiar here. So, I sought out people that I knew would see my wholeness because I had felt so fragmented in my life and so cut up in different pieces by people. And so in communities that we can feel and see each other's wholeness, then we can begin to settle our nervous system and we can really connect intimately with who we are, that Buddha within, if you will, and to really understand the teachings of how to operate, not from fear, not from hatred, but from love and care. And really starting that love and care right here. It's just, so what I was going to name the people. My first teacher was Eric Kolvig. And then there's Marina Weissman and Larry Yang. And I've had other teachers who weren't all queer. So just to let you know, I do have a diversity of out there. But that's kind of like, I really want to like name this queer lineage of teachers that I've had, because I think it's really important to, for me to be able to recognize how held I've been by that practice and by the queer teachers. So just to kind of summarize in my teaching tonight about the three jewels. So this invitation into, practicing with the three jewels is a kind of a different way to think about protecting ourselves and holding ourselves. And rather than orienting towards accumulation or separation or, fear, we're invited into this place to take refuge in kindness, in interconnectedness and in compassion. And rather than, separating ourselves from the world to find that peace, can we turn towards like the flow of what arises and what passes away? and find that inner wisdom, the inner knowing, to be in the midst of it all, to remember that we are in this stream, and like all streams, the flow. Well, we don't have many streams here in California at this moment, but for those of you who remember streams, streams flow at different rates throughout the year. And sometimes, they're slow and sometimes they're fast. And just like the day and night of the night sky, we're in this process, we're in these cycles. And within the cycles of the world, we can practice with these different refuges. So I want to end with this prayer, and it's called, it's from the Navajo, and it's from the blessing ceremony. And when I first heard it, it was profoundly impactful for me, because given the impact of centuries of genocide and colonization, that this prayer can be part of the Navajo ceremony is just profoundly moving to me. And I don't know Navajo, so this is the translation that I know into English. And it's from the blessing ceremony. In beauty I walk, with beauty before me I walk, with beauty behind me I walk, with beauty above me I walk, with beauty around me I walk. It has become beauty again. Today I will walk out. Today everything negative will leave me. I will be as I was before. I will have a cool breeze over my body. I will be happy forever. Nothing will hinder me. I walk with beauty before me. I walk with beauty behind me. I walk with beauty below me. I walk with beauty above me. I walk with beauty around me. My words will be beautiful. In beauty all day long may I walk. Through the returning seasons may I walk. On the trail marked with pollen may I walk. With dew about my feet may I walk. With beauty before me may I walk. With beauty behind me may I walk. With beauty below me may I walk. With beauty above me may I walk. With beauty all around me may I walk. In old age, wandering in a trail of beauty, lively may I walk. In old age, wandering on a trail of beauty, living again may I walk. My words will be beautiful.